I worked in the funeral home that handled Whitney Houston's body, and what I saw inside made me quit. At first, I thought it was just another job, another celebrity death to deal with. But from the moment they brought her in, everything felt wrong. It wasn't just her body, it was the atmosphere in the room. The whispers, the coldness, the way the whole thing felt. Cursed. What I witnessed there made me question everything I knew about life, death, and the industry that profits from it. The night Whitney Houston's body arrived, I knew something was off. You could feel it in the air, like the building itself was bracing for something it wasn't prepared for. The funeral home had always been a quiet, eerie place. It was the kind of place you could get lost in, walking down long, dimly lit halls that never quite felt like they were your own. But tonight, it was different. I don't know how to explain it, but the air was thick, heavier than usual. It wasn't just the late hour either. It was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I had just clocked in for the night shift, thinking it was going to be another typical night of preparing bodies for viewing. I'd been in the business long enough to know that it could get uncomfortable, but it was a job. You get used to it, or at least you're supposed to. But this was different. This wasn't some unknown person being brought in for a final send-off. This was Whitney Houston, a legend, a name everyone knew, a woman who had defined a generation. And here I was, about to prepare her for something that felt like it should be sacred, but I knew it wouldn't be. I knew it couldn't be. The car pulled into the parking lot with a quiet hum, headlights casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. I watched the staff wheel the gurney towards the back entrance, but I couldn't move. I couldn't tear my eyes away. Even the cold night air felt heavy. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe some sense of reverence or respect. Maybe I thought I'd feel some sort of, I don't know, respect for her final resting place, but no. The staff didn't treat her like a person anymore. She wasn't a legend anymore. She was just another body, another celebrity to be processed, another paycheck. It felt wrong, deep in my gut. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I was witnessing something unnatural. I wasn't the only one who noticed. The air seemed to shift as soon as they brought her inside. The funeral director, a man who'd seen it all, kept his distance. He barely spoke, his face pale under the dim lights of the prep room. The other staff, they didn't even look her way. It was like they were scared, but they were too used to this kind of thing to admit it. Something about her presence, or lack of presence, was disturbing. It was as if her body wasn't fully there, like it was suspended between worlds. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself it was just the stress. It had been a long week, and I'd been working overtime. But the feeling in the room was undeniable. Something wasn't right. As I stood there, staring at the body before me, I couldn't help but wonder, why her? Why did it feel like the entire world was watching? Maybe it was because of who she was. The industry had built her up, tore her down, and now here she was, lying on a gurney in a sterile room. A life once so full of energy, of passion, of talent, reduced to this. And yet, it wasn't just about her fame. There was something darker beneath it all, something deeper than just celebrity death. I didn't dare touch her yet. I could feel her eyes on me, even though I knew they were closed. I couldn't explain it, but it was like the room itself was alive. Like I was intruding on something I wasn't supposed to see. And that's when it happened. A small sound, almost imperceptible. A shuffle of feet, maybe. I turned, expecting to see one of the staff coming in to check on things. But no one was there. The room was empty. I turned back to the body, and that's when I felt it. A slight breeze, as if someone had opened a window. But all the windows were shut. The room was sealed tight. I walked closer to her body, trying to ignore the feeling of wrongness that surrounded me. As I stepped closer, I could feel the cold air surrounding her, chilling me to the bone. It was suffocating. I tried to focus on the task at hand, telling myself I was just here to do my job. But the closer I got, the more I felt drawn to her. Something about her stillness was pulling at me, like it wanted to keep me there, like she was waiting for me to make a move. My hand hovered over her, and for a brief moment, I almost touched her face, but that was when I felt it. The sensation that crawled up my spine, that made my heart skip a beat. I could have sworn I saw her eyes flicker. And just for a second, a tiny movement, a flash of light, and then nothing. But I wasn't imagining it. I could feel it in my gut, deep in my chest. I wasn't alone in that room. She wasn't alone in that room. I heard something. Soft at first. Barely a sound, but it was there. Come closer. My heart raced. I froze. I couldn't move. I should have walked away, should have gone to the others, but I couldn't. The words echoed in my head. Come closer. And I took a step forward without even realizing it. That's when I saw her face again. But this time, her eyes were open. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. But that wasn't the worst part. What came next would haunt me forever. The night after Whitney's body arrived was when I realized something was terribly wrong. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened in the prep room. I kept replaying the moment her eyes seemed to flicker open, wondering if I had imagined it. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. The cold air, the stillness in the room, the way the temperature dropped. And it wasn't normal. It wasn't just the usual eeriness of working in a funeral home. There was something more, something darker, and I couldn't shake it. The whispers started that night, soft and distant at first. At first, I told myself I was just tired, but as the night went on, the voices became louder. I was doing my usual rounds, checking the rooms, making sure everything was in order. It wasn't like I had much else to do, not with the staff gone for the night. The place was empty, except for me, the bodies, and whatever else was lurking in the shadows. I should have been used to it by now, the silence, the cold. But tonight, it felt different. The building felt like it was watching me. As I passed the prep room where Whitney's body had been, I felt that familiar coldness hit me again. It wasn't just the air. It felt like the space itself had become something else. Alive, almost. But it was still. Dead. Silent. That was when I heard it. A soft, unmistakable whisper. It was coming from inside the prep room. At first I thought it was just the wind, or maybe the house settling. But then I heard it again. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was clear. Come closer. I froze. My heart dropped to my stomach, and every instinct in me screamed to run. But for some reason, I didn't. The whisper was like a command, pulling me forward, urging me to move, like I was compelled to go back into that room. I didn't know why I couldn't turn away. I was afraid. I was terrified. But something about it, something about that voice kept me there. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. The stress, the exhaustion, It had to be that. But when I reached the door, I didn't open it. I couldn't. I stood there, breathing hard, my hand on the cold metal of the doorknob. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to scream. But instead, I stayed frozen in place, listening to the silence that had taken over the room. And then, just when I thought I had convinced myself it was nothing, I heard it again. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a groan, low, like something heavy was shifting in the room. My blood ran cold. What the hell was that? The groan was followed by a deep, slow exhale, as if someone were breathing right behind the door. I couldn't move. The air felt like it was pressing against me, suffocating me. I wanted to run, but I couldn't tear myself away. The door creaked open, just slightly, like it was being pulled from the inside. I hesitated for a moment, my hand trembling on the knob. The whispers had stopped, replaced by an eerie quiet. My heartbeat echoed in my ears as I slowly pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. The room was dark, only dimly lit by the faint glow of the hallway lights. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Whitney's body still lay on the gurney, perfectly still, untouched. But that's when I felt it. The temperature drop, like a rush of icy air swept through the room. It was like stepping into the freezer aisle of a grocery store. And that's when I saw it. Her fingers. They moved, just a fraction, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. Her fingers had twitched, twitching like she was waking up. I stepped back, my breath caught in my throat. No, this couldn't be happening. Bodies don't just move. But then again, nothing about this felt normal. I blinked, thinking it was just my eyes playing tricks on me, but no. Her fingers twitched again. And this time, it was more than a twitch. It was a movement. Her hand slowly rose, just inches off the table, as if reaching for something. I slammed the door shut. I didn't even think. I just ran. My heart was pounding in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I ran to the staff room and locked the door behind me, my hands shaking. I couldn't believe what had just happened. Was I losing my mind? Was I seeing things? The movement had been subtle, but it was real. I couldn't deny it. I had seen it with my own eyes. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself it was just a bad reaction to the stress. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. This wasn't stress. It was something far worse. The whispers were back. The shadows were growing darker, and I couldn't escape. No matter how much I tried to rationalize it, I couldn't get away from the feeling that Whitney's body wasn't just a corpse. It wasn't just a lifeless shell. There was something still alive in that room. Something that shouldn't have been there. And I was right to be scared. The rest of the night was a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. I kept hearing the whispers, even when no one was around. The shadows were moving, shifting in the corners of my vision. Every time I turned around, I thought I saw something standing behind me. But when I looked, there was nothing there. By the time my shift ended, I was so shaken that I couldn't leave fast enough. I grabbed my things and bolted out of the funeral home, not looking back. But even as I walked out into the night air, I could still feel it. The cold, the presence. Something was following me, watching me from the shadows. I didn't know how, but I knew it was real. I knew it wasn't going to stop. I should have quit then. I should have left that night, walked away, and never looked back. But I didn't. I couldn't. I had no idea what I was up against. But I was about to find out. The days that followed Whitney's arrival felt like a blur. I could barely sleep, and when I did, I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. It wasn't just the nightmares. It was the constant feeling that I was being watched, even when I was alone in my apartment. I had tried to shake it off, but the whispers kept haunting me. They didn't just happen at the funeral home anymore. They followed me home. They followed me everywhere. And worse, every time I closed my eyes, I could still see her. Whitney's eyes, wide open, staring into me. That look, I couldn't escape it. The worst part, I wasn't just afraid anymore. I was feeling something else. Guilt. It wasn't just the haunting that was getting to me. It was what I had seen and what I was still part of. The funeral home was a business after all. But Whitney wasn't just another celebrity. She wasn't a commodity to be profited from. And yet, that's exactly how everyone treated her, even after death. The way they moved her body around like it was just another piece of merchandise, just another paycheck, it disgusted me. But the worst part was that I was complicit in it. I was part of it. I was taking part in something I couldn't stomach. I started to notice how the funeral home treated the bodies of famous people. There was no respect, no reverence, just cold, sterile preparation for viewing. But it wasn't just about the dead. It was about the living. The way they saw death as an opportunity, a way to make money. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The industry had a stranglehold on every part of this process, from the families to the bodies themselves. It was all a game. And the only thing that mattered was the money. What struck me the most was how everyone else was okay with it. Everyone except me. I started to resent the staff. They moved through their days with ease, joking, laughing, talking about the celebrities they had worked with like it was just another part of the job. But I wasn't like them. I couldn't be. Every time I looked at Whitney's body, it felt like I was betraying her. Like I was complicit in something dark, something that went against every moral fiber in me. But I couldn't walk away. I couldn't leave. I had no choice but to keep going. The whispers were too loud. They were everywhere, always just behind me. And no matter how many times I tried to tell myself it was all in my head, I knew it wasn't. The guilt was real. But the whispers didn't stop. They didn't fade away. In fact, they grew louder. The deeper I got into my work, the more I realized how far this whole thing went. It wasn't just the funeral home. It wasn't just about Whitney. This was about the whole industry. The way they took the souls of the famous, ground them into dust, and sold what was left for profit. I felt sick, but what was worse was how I couldn't escape it. I was stuck, trapped in this nightmare of my own making. Every time I thought I could walk away, the whispers pulled me back. Every time I thought I could ignore it, something would happen to remind me that I was trapped, tied to the curse of the industry that had already consumed Whitney. I started seeing things that weren't there. Shadows in the hallways, figures moving in the corners of my vision. I could feel the presence of something watching me. But when I turned, there was nothing. I started to lose track of time. I'd walk into the funeral home, and it would feel like hours passed in what seemed like minutes. It was as if the place had become a vacuum, sucking me in, making it impossible for me to leave. The longer I stayed, the more the whispers became demands. They were no longer just vague calls, but commands, telling me what to do, where to go, what to see. And every time I listened, the guilt grew heavier. I tried to distance myself from the other staff, hoping that somehow, if I just kept to myself, it would all go away. But it didn't. The whispers never stopped. They were always there, always waiting. They weren't just in my head anymore. I could hear them in the hallways, in the storage rooms, in the back office. It was like the building itself was alive, and it was talking to me, pulling me deeper into the darkness of what had been done to these bodies. It wasn't just the whispers, though. It was the feeling. Every time I walked past the prep room, I could feel Whitney's body pulling at me, reaching for me like it wanted me to stay. I tried to ignore it. I tried to tell myself that it was all in my mind, that I was just overthinking it. But it wasn't. Every time I was near her body, I felt that strange, suffocating pull. It was like she was alive, trapped in the body, begging for release. But there was no release for her. Not here. Not in the hands of the industry that had used her up and thrown her aside. And that was when I realized the truth. The whispers weren't just about Whitney. They weren't just about the job or the industry. They were about me. The guilt I felt wasn't just for what had happened to her. It was for what I was becoming. I was no different from the people who had used her, taken advantage of her, profited off her pain. I was a part of it. And no matter how much I tried to distance myself from it, I couldn't escape. The curse of the industry was inside me, eating away at my soul. And no matter how far I ran, it was always gonna be there, watching, waiting, until it consumed me completely. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't just afraid of what was happening in that funeral home. I was afraid of what I had become. I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't hide. The curse had already taken root, and it was too late to stop it. By now, I knew something was deeply wrong with that place. It wasn't just the cold or the whispers or the strange way the air felt alive in the prep room. It was the shadows. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. After all, working late hours in a funeral home surrounded by death could mess with anyone's mind. But what I started to see wasn't normal. It wasn't just the occasional dark corner or a trick of the light. These shadows moved, not the way they should have. They followed me. They shifted when I wasn't looking. They stalked me. And the longer I stayed, the more I realized I wasn't just being paranoid. The building was alive with something darker than I could comprehend. One night, after another long shift, I was walking down the corridor near the back office. It was quiet, too quiet. The other staff had left hours ago, and the only sound was the echo of my footsteps on the tile floor. But something wasn't right. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. It wasn't just the silence, it was a presence, a weight in the air, pressing against my chest. Every instinct in me told me to leave, but my feet wouldn't move. I stopped and turned, half expecting to see someone standing there, waiting. But there was no one, just the dark, empty hallway. Then I saw it, a shadow, moving quickly across the far wall. I blinked, thinking it was just a trick of the light, but it wasn't. I watched it, my heart racing as it crept across the floor and up the wall like it was alive. It didn't move like a normal shadow. It was too fluid, too quick. It wasn't something cast by a person or an object. It was something else, something wrong. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that I was just seeing things, but it followed me. The shadows were everywhere now. At first, they were just at the edges of my vision, flickering in and out like something you couldn't quite focus on. But now, they were solid, moving, waiting. They were hunting me. I remember walking past the hallway where Whitney's body had been prepared. The lights were dim, the air thick with a coldness that seemed to be suffocating the room. As I passed the door, I heard it. A low, guttural sound. A growl. It wasn't human. It wasn't an animal. It was something else. Something I couldn't explain. I froze, unable to move. My breath hitched in my throat as the growl grew louder, more desperate. The shadows in the room seemed to pulse with it, moving, writhing like they were alive. They were alive. The shadows were alive. I backed away slowly, my feet frozen to the floor. My mind was racing. What the hell was going on in that room? What had happened to Whitney's body? What had the industry done to her? It wasn't just her body that was haunting me. It was the entire system that had used her, manipulated her, turned her into a product to be consumed. The shadows were a reflection of that darkness. They were a part of the curse, and it was chasing me. I turned the corner, but I didn't feel safe. I could still hear the growl, faint now, but still there. It was following me. I wasn't just hearing it. I could feel it. Like something was creeping up behind me, just waiting to strike. The shadows weren't just in the room with her body. They were with me, too. Everywhere I went, they were there, lurking just out of sight, but always present. I tried to run. I wanted to get out, but the building was like a maze. The more I tried to escape, the more it pulled me back in. Every hallway felt like it was stretching out, twisting, turning in on itself like the building was alive and shifting, trapping me inside. The more I tried to ignore the shadows, the stronger they became. It was like they knew my fear. They thrived on it. They fed on it. Every step I took, they grew bolder. Every corner I turned, they were right there, creeping closer, waiting for me to make a mistake. I was starting to crack. The pressure of it all, the guilt, the fear. It was too much. The shadows were getting closer, crawling along the walls and floor like they were hunting me down. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. The whispers were louder than ever, the shadows closing in. I decided I would confront whatever was haunting me, whatever was tormenting this place. I went back to the prep room, determined to face whatever was causing this madness. I wasn't going to run anymore. I had to know what was happening. I had to see it for myself. The door creaked as I pushed it open, but the room was empty. Whitney's body wasn't there. The gurney was gone. My heart started to race. What the hell was happening? The room was cold, colder than it should have been. I could feel the presence again. Something, someone, watching me. I wasn't alone. Then, out of nowhere, a shadow moved across the wall. It wasn't just a shadow, it was a figure. Tall, dark. It didn't have a shape, but it was moving like it was alive. The temperature in the room plummeted. I couldn't breathe. My body froze in place. And then the whisper came again. Not in my ear, but in my mind. You should have left. I tried to run. I reached for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The shadows were blocking my way. I was trapped trapped in the very place I had tried to escape. The curse wasn't just in the building, it was inside me now. It had followed me. It would never let me go. The shadows were a part of me now, and I was a part of them. By the time the next week rolled around, I was beyond the point of exhaustion. The whispers never stopped, growing louder with each passing day. I was physically and mentally drained. Every moment spent in the funeral home felt like I was drowning, being pulled deeper into something I couldn't control. My hands shook uncontrollably, and I couldn't stop hearing the growls, the whispers, the cries that seemed to be coming from the shadows themselves. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, that I was seeing things because I hadn't slept in days, but the longer I stayed, the harder it was to ignore it. And then came the dreams. At night, I couldn't escape. I would close my eyes, but sleep didn't bring peace. Instead, it dragged me back to the funeral home, to Whitney's body. In my dreams, her eyes would open. They would lock onto mine with an intensity that felt real, like she was trying to tell me something, like she was begging for help. I would try to scream to get away, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, trapped in the dream, just like I was trapped in the funeral home. But it wasn't just Whitney I saw. Number. I started seeing faces, other faces, familiar faces, famous faces. I would wake up in a cold sweat, staring at the shadows that danced across the walls of my room. But it wasn't just the faces of celebrities. It was the faces of people I didn't recognize, people who had long been forgotten. Faces of the lost. Faces of those who had been forgotten by the world, who were only remembered as bodies to be used and discarded. And the more I saw these faces, the more I realized this wasn't just happening to Whitney. It was happening to all of them. I couldn't take it anymore. The guilt was suffocating me. I had become just like the rest of them, just another cog in the machine, another person exploiting death for profit. I couldn't live with it anymore. But when I tried to leave, the whispers came again. The shadows were everywhere, waiting for me to make a mistake, waiting for me to feel fear so they could feed on it. I couldn't escape the curse. It had already taken root. And now, it was consuming me from the inside out. One night, I couldn't stand it. I walked into the prep room, prepared to confront whatever I had been avoiding. I knew I couldn't run anymore. I had to face this head on. But when I opened the door, I was hit with an overwhelming sense of wrongness. The room was cold. So cold. The kind of cold that cuts through your skin, freezes you from the inside out. I could see my breath as I stepped into the room. And then I saw her. Whitney's body, still on the gurney, just as it had been before. But this time, something was different. Her eyes were open, wide open, staring at me with an intensity that made my heart stop. I froze, unable to move. I couldn't tear my eyes away from hers. I didn't want to look away, but I couldn't look any longer. It felt like her gaze was piercing me, like she knew what I had done, like she knew I was just as guilty as the others. She wasn't just a body. She was alive, alive in the way that only death can make you alive. And I had helped put her here. I had helped turn her into a product for the industry. The room felt suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. The words wouldn't come. Whitney's eyes seemed to follow me, and the longer I stood there, the more I felt the weight of her gaze crushing me. It was like she was holding me there, trapping me in this nightmare. The shadows in the room were moving now, swirling around the walls like they were alive. I could feel them closing in on me. I couldn't take it. I had to leave. I turned to run, but that's when I heard it. A voice. Not Whitney's voice, but something darker, something malevolent. It whispered my name, soft and insistent. "You can't leave." I spun around, but there was no one there. Just the shadows stretching and writhing, filling every corner of the room. The air was thick with something I couldn't name, something ancient, something hungry. I felt like I was being suffocated by the very walls around me. The curse wasn't just affecting me, it was consuming me, and I was powerless to stop it. As I backed away, desperate to escape, the shadows seemed to come to life. They stretched out, wrapping themselves around my legs, my arms, pulling me back into the room. I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to scream, but no sound came. The whispers were louder now, deafening. "You're not leaving." I clawed at the door, trying to break free, but the shadows held me tight. They weren't letting me go. I could feel them sinking into my skin, crawling beneath it, filling my veins with ice. This was it. The curse had taken me. There was no escaping it now. I had become just another soul trapped in the industry's grip. Whitney was just the beginning. The shadows were everywhere, and they were coming for me. But then, just as I thought I couldn't take any more, the shadows receded. The pressure lifted, and I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. I looked around the room, my body trembling, but the shadows were gone. The whispers had stopped. Whitney's body was still there, still lifeless, but the curse had marked me. I could feel it in my bones. I couldn't escape. No matter how far I ran, the curse of the industry would follow me. I could feel it closing in. The whispers had become demands, and I was losing control. The longer I stayed in that funeral home, the more it consumed me. The shadows weren't just something I could ignore anymore. They were real. They had weight, form, and they were following me. Every step I took, every breath I drew, they were closer. I couldn't breathe without feeling them at my heels, the chill of their presence pressing against my skin. It was like I was trapped in some kind of hell that I couldn't escape. The curse of the industry wasn't just a ghost haunting the walls of the funeral home. It was inside me, and it was never going to let me go. I knew I had to confront it. I couldn't keep running. I had to face the truth, whatever that truth was. I couldn't pretend anymore that I didn't know what was happening, or that I wasn't a part of it. The industry had already claimed Whitney. It had claimed so many others before her. And now, it had me. But there was something more I needed to understand. Something deeper that I couldn't ignore. That night, I stayed late again. The staff had all left. The building was dark, and the hum of the refrigerator in the back was the only sound in the silence. But even the hum of the machines couldn't drown out the whispers that were crawling under my skin. They were louder now. You can't escape. Every step I took toward the prep room felt like it was pulling me into the dark heart of whatever curse had taken root in that place. I stood in front of the door. I wasn't sure I was ready, but I knew I had no choice. I pushed the door open. The room was cold, colder than it had ever been before. I could see my breath in the air. The temperature had dropped so suddenly that it felt like I had walked into a freezer. My fingers were numb as I reached for the light switch, but the lights didn't turn on. I cursed under my breath, fumbling for my phone to use as a flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the cold, sterile walls. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I was alone, but I didn't feel alone. I could feel something in the room with me, watching me, breathing with me. The shadows were stretching out, pulling themselves across the floor like they were reaching for me. I knew it. I knew they were alive. The shadows weren't just darkness. They were something else. Something that had been awakened by the industry's greed, by the way it had treated these people like disposable objects, like products to be used and thrown away. Whitney wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. My pulse quickened as I stepped further into the room. The shadows seemed to stretch and flicker as if they were reacting to my presence. They were alive, and they were feeding off my fear. The room felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in on me, like the entire building was pressing down on me. My breath was shallow, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what I was afraid of anymore. Was it the shadows? The curse? Or was it the realization that I had become just another cog in the machine of death? I didn't know. I didn't care. I just wanted out. But the door wouldn't open. The shadows had already blocked it. It was as if the entire room had turned against me. I slammed my shoulder against the door, but it wouldn't budge. I tried again and again, but nothing worked. The shadows were pushing back. They were keeping me there, forcing me to face whatever was lurking in the dark corners of my mind. And then, in the silence, I heard it. A voice. It wasn't one of the whispers. It wasn't just a thought in my head. It was clear. You're mine now. I turned, but there was no one there. I felt the shadows pressing in, creeping across the walls, the floor, the ceiling. They were everywhere, surrounding me, swallowing the light. I was trapped. The curse had taken its hold, and there was no way out. The voice came again, louder this time, a growl in its tone. It was coming from inside me. It was inside my mind. You can never leave. You will never leave. I tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. The shadows were too thick. I could feel them wrapping around my throat, choking me, suffocating me. I couldn't breathe. The whispers grew into voices, voices from the past, from the dead, from the forgotten. All of them screaming, all of them trapped in the same nightmare I was now living. I felt their pain. I felt their anger. It was raw. It was relentless. And it was consuming me. I couldn't escape. I couldn't fight it. I was part of the curse now. The industry had claimed me, just like it had claimed Whitney. It had consumed her life, her soul, and now it had done the same to me. I was just another victim of the system, another forgotten soul swallowed by the machine of fame and greed. And as I stood there, choking in the suffocating dark, I realized there was no redemption. There was no escape. The curse of the industry wasn't something that could be broken. It wasn't a haunting. It wasn't a ghost. It was a cycle, and it was endless. The shadows closed in. The whispers consumed me, and I was lost. It felt like everything had collapsed around me. The shadows, the whispers, the curse of the industry. They weren't just haunting me anymore. They were consuming me, becoming part of my very being. The longer I stayed in that funeral home, the more I felt like I was disappearing, losing myself to something darker than I could have ever imagined. My mind was unraveling. The terror I felt every time I walked through the halls was unbearable. I couldn't trust myself anymore. I couldn't tell what was real and what was the curse messing with my mind. I had to leave, I knew it, but I didn't know how. Every time I tried to leave, the whispers would stop me. The shadows would block my path, locking me in the same place I had tried to escape. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was a prison. A prison that fed on my fear, my guilt, and my despair. The funeral home was the place I had sold my soul to. And now, it had its hold on me, but no matter how hard I tried to fight it, no matter how much I wanted to walk away, I couldn't. The building had become my cage, and there was no escape. I knew the only way out was to face it. I had to confront the curse head on, but I wasn't sure I could do it. I wasn't sure I could survive whatever it was that had taken root in that place. But I had no choice. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't part of the problem. I walked into the prep room that night, the air thick with the same oppressive cold that had followed me since the beginning. It felt like I was walking into the belly of the beast, knowing that this would be the last time. I could feel the shadows gathering, waiting for me to step into their grasp. They were watching me, following me with every move I made. The whispers were louder now, a chorus of voices telling me to leave, to run. But it was too late. I couldn't turn back. I had made up my mind. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I could feel the presence of something dark and powerful in the room with me. The air grew colder with every passing second. I knew it wasn't just the temperature, it was something more. The room was alive, pulsing with energy, and that's when I saw it. There, in the corner of the room, stood a figure. It wasn't a person. It wasn't a shadow. It was something else. Something I couldn't describe. A dark, formless shape, like a cloud of darkness that stretched and moved like liquid smoke. The moment I saw it, I felt a wave of dread crash over me. My heart hammered in my chest. I could feel the weight of it, the pressure of it, suffocating me. But I didn't look away. I couldn't. I had to face it. I had to face the curse. Face the thing that had haunted me, that had claimed so many before me. I stepped forward slowly, every muscle in my body screaming at me to turn around and run. But I didn't. I had come this far. I had to know the truth. The figure in the corner shifted. It moved towards me, and I could feel the coldness, the darkness, crawling into my veins, wrapping around my heart. It was in my head, in my body. It was inside me now. The whispers were deafening, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The darkness was all around me. And then I heard it. The voice, not in my ears, but deep inside me. It was the voice of the curse. You belong to us now. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. The darkness had claimed me. It had taken my soul, and there was no escaping it. I felt the weight of all the lives that had been consumed by this industry, by this curse. Whitney's face flashed in front of me, her eyes wide and unblinking. Her body, cold and still. She had been trapped just like I was. Just like everyone who had ever been consumed by the machine of fame. But this time, it wasn't just about Whitney. It was about all of us. We were all part of it. We were all feeding the machine, feeding the curse, and now it had taken everything from us. The shadows closed in around me, pressing down on me. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in like a coffin. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't escape. I was trapped. I had always been trapped. And that was when I knew. I had made the decision. I couldn't escape the curse. I couldn't escape the industry. It had already claimed me. The only thing left for me to do was to accept it. To accept that I was part of something much darker than I had ever imagined. As I stood there, suffocating in the darkness, I realized that no one walks away from the curse of the industry. Not once you've seen what's behind the curtain. Not once you've become part of the machine. It was too late for me. It was too late for all of us. Final payoff. I thought I could walk away. I thought I could outrun it, outrun the shadows, the whispers, the curse. But I was wrong. The moment I stepped into that funeral home, I was already lost. The industry had claimed me just like it claimed Whitney, just like it claimed every other soul it chewed up and spit out. The shadows followed me, suffocating me, feeding on my guilt and fear. There was no escape. The curse wasn't just a haunting. It was alive, and it lived in every corner of that place, in every soul it had consumed. Now I'm trapped, and I know I'll never be free. I hear the whispers still in the dark, in my mind. They're always there, always waiting. The industry will never let me go. It has me now, and it will never stop.